Sunday on, well, everybody, this is Green Sunday on November 9th, and we have Paul LaRudy talking to us. Paul is a former Ford Foundation project supervisor and Fulbright Hayes lecturer in Lebanon and a U.S. government advisor to Saudi Arabia. He's been on the faculty of San Francisco State University, the University of San Francisco, St. Mary's College in Moraga, and Hagazin College in Beirut. He was with the International Solidarity Movement in Palestine and co-founded the movement to break the Israel naval siege of Gaza. He was aboard the boats that successfully entered Gaza in 2008 and the 2010 flotilla attacked by Israel. He was shot by an Israeli soldier in 2002. I hope you've recovered from that. And he co-founded the Global March to Jerusalem, the Free Palestinian Movement, and the Syria Solidarity Movement. He was one of 6 U.S. observers of the Syrian presidential elections in June 2014. He is CFO of the Association for Investment in Popular Action Committees, 501c corporation that sponsors human rights and humanitarian aid projects in the West, in West Asia, Latin America, and other regions. He publishes on Substack and Dissident Voice and occasionally other publications. And we welcome Paul, who will be talking about Iran.
Thank you very much. So the topic, as I recall, is, remind me the title of this. Who wins? That's right.
That's
Well,
right.
as
Who
usual,
wins the war in Iran, with Iran?
yeah. As usual, with any war, everybody loses. So that's the simple answer to that question. But at the time the question was proposed, there were reasons in the popular media and even in the alternative media to a large extent to fear that an invasion by the United States and Israel of Iran was possibly imminent. I did not, I think I mentioned to Jim that I did not think it was imminent. And I guess I mentioned it in the abstract of my presentation, that I differed with this opinion. And initially, Max Blumenthal also agreed with me on that. And then he changed his mind after he went to Iran and spoke to Iranians there, and they were all really concerned. And so he came back thinking that no, it's probably just around the corner. But then he started to change his mind as well. What I would like to, I have my reasons, I'll try to point them out, for why I never bought into this. But I want to start with an analysis by Alistair Crook. I'm sure many of you know who he is. And he is one of the many, both Max and Alistair are one of close to 60 different individuals and organizations that have been given an award with a grant by the Serena Shim Award, which is part of the nonprofit that where I hold an office. So, and I very much trust almost everything that Alistair reports in terms of factual content. And I usually trust his judgment as well. But in this case, I got to say I disagree with him on this issue. Anyway, what I want to say is that Alistair might agree with me now, because he said that the Israeli military, if they postponed the invasion, until late November, then they wouldn't do it. And the reason is that Israeli pilots, and let's face it, the Israeli military is the Israeli pilots and the um, unmanned missiles and vehicles that drones and so forth that Israel has. The ground forces are almost negligible in terms of what they of their capability. They have capability in localities where there's no opposition, such as in the current circumstances, to a certain extent, southern Lebanon, and also in the portions of Syria that they have taken since the fall of the Assad regime. So, but that's not an issue right now. I mean, it's almost half of the recruits who have already served in the military have said they're not. I don't care how much you call me back to serve. I'm not serving, and that's a problem for the military in Israel. Furthermore, there are many more that have simply gone abroad, and I wouldn't say deserted, but they were not prevented from going abroad. So in terms of infantry, ground troops, and in terms of vehicles, tanks, and so forth, Israel doesn't have that much of a force. It relies almost entirely on massive amounts of bombs and rockets mounted on U.S. warplanes to do almost all of its damage, and we know that that's exactly what's being used in the genocide in Gaza, for example. So it's for Israel, it's not a slam dunk to do this kind of thing. Now, what Alistair said was that these aircraft are accustomed to flying in airspace that has lots of visibility, not where there are clouds or rain or things like that. And his contact said, they don't want to, if it involves a winter invasion after the rains start, then they probably won't do it. So that's, and they may have photographs of the area that they're supposed to attack, and they may have the kinds of things that you use to guide guided missiles to the place that you want them to hit in Iran. But apparently, Israeli pilots are not comfortable in low visibility situations. So they think that he thinks that if they wait that long, they're not going to do it until at least next spring. So that's part of where my skepticism comes from. But there are other reasons that I think that they won't attack. Neither the United States nor Israel will attack Iran. And part of this is that right now, they really don't have much reason to do that. I mean, they have a so-called ceasefire in Gaza, the real result of which is they're not being hit by Yemeni missiles, that Hezbollah is not attacking them, and Iran is essentially quietly waiting. So they're not in any imminent danger. It's not like Netanyahu has to say to the Israeli people, I'm going to put a stop to all these attacks on you. There aren't any attacks right now, basically. They are doing the attacking in Gaza and to some extent, still in Syria. and definitely in southern Lebanon. They're taking, and in Gaza, of course. Uh, uh, the term ceasefire means that Israel's enemies cease and Israel fires. That's basically what it amounts to. So we'll see where that ends up. I mean, I'm not saying that it won't happen in the future at some point, but it doesn't look to me like it's close to happening now. Now, there are other reasons too, and that is that certainly Trump has said that he wants to put Iran in its place. He's going to, if Iran steps out of line, he's going to destroy Iran and all this sort of thing. But first of all, when the JCPOA ran out, I was asked on behalf of from contacts in Iran to help prevent the catastrophe that's going to happen when all the provisions of the JCPOA disappear. Well, the result was a nothing burger. The provisions ran out, and Iran was not deeply affected by changes in let's say sanctions and this sort of thing. So, and in the meantime, they started building their relationships with the BRICS and with the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, and specifically with Russia and China, especially Russia, but to a certain extent, China as well. And the feeling is that they're not in desperate shape. When I was in Iran, and those of you who've been there might verify this. You know, the shops were fairly full, mostly with Chinese goods, and I mean good Chinese goods, and inexpensive and so forth. So it uh, it they're not as prosperous as they want to be, or that they would be if the sanctions and restrictions were not there. But it's not that bad. They're managing pretty well, and the poverty is not extreme in most places. So so that's it. So Iran has no idea, no reason to try to start up a war with Israel and the United States, but they definitely want to be prepared for it. Now, the war in June was a wake-up call for Iran. They had no idea that Israel could do to them what was done at that time. Well, what exactly was done? The main effect was assassinations. And the assassinations took place not with artillery or with aircraft or I mean, some of it was with drones that were sent from where? Israel? No, they were sent from Azerbaijan to the north by allies of Israel. I suppose a lot of them were Kurdish allies of Israel. And they a lot of the assassinations happened by groups inside Iran and individuals, and they had been planning it from everything that could be seen for at least 18 months. But as soon as it happened, the planners were rounded up, and a significant number of them were executed. So that's not something they can replicate a second time. That takes enormous amounts of spying and organization and underground organizing and all that sort of thing. Well, they've done it. There's not much more they can do. In the same way that with Lebanon, they can't replicate easily the exploding pagers. You know, it's just it's a one-off thing for the most part, unless you wait long enough, and they're not planning to wait that long. So, and then there are the reports of the war itself. And I'm going to refer to my notes because I wanted to be prepared for you. Now, according to the Israeli reports, 900 targets were hit in Iran. Now, this includes all of the assassinations. Those are individual targets. It includes, if one drone goes and drops something or fires something, that's a target. If I don't know if any piloted aircraft got there. I looked everywhere to find information. There was no confirmation that any piloted aircraft ever made it into Iran. No confirmation. And in the supposed attack that happened in April, the Israeli aircraft went through Iraq, were refueled there by a US bases there, and they headed to the Iranian border to do mayhem inside Iran. And they were hit with a barrage of electronic defenses over which they didn't have enough way to shut them off or to cancel them or all that sort of thing. And they headed back. Iran is prepared for this. They have a great deal of preparation. So there's no confirmation that any piloted Israeli aircraft crossed the frontiers of Iran in June. Now, I find that hard to believe that it didn't happen, but there's no confirmation of that happening anywhere. Furthermore, the damages in Iran are primarily human damage. They hit human targets, as they do almost everywhere in South Lebanon, in the West Bank, in Gaza, and so forth. That's what they hit. They don't hit strategic targets. They don't have any strategic targets to hit. And in Iran, those strategic targets are probably pretty well defended. So they may have hit some. Let's see. It's claimed that Iranian ballistic missile and drone infrastructure was severely downgraded, with a destruction of around 250 missile launchers, about 1,000 missiles destroyed, and more than 80 air defense batteries rendered inoperable. But there's no proof of that. There's no evidence of it. This is what Israel is claiming. Israeli intelligence is claiming. So let's see. And there was some infrastructure damage, and that has been confirmed. For example, the gas field, Bushehr gas field, and a fire in a gas facility that halted some production. That is damage, but it's not irreparable. So I don't know. I find it hard to believe that the impact on Iran was so great. In fact, what happened in Iran is that they reacted among the public, and I got this through Max Blumenthal. The public was at first shocked at all the assassinations of high figures that took place at the beginning of the war. And then they waited and nothing happened. And by the end of the war, they saw that Iran was prepared and had in each case people ready to step into those very important positions rapidly and to take up the standard and to be very efficient in what they were doing. And by the end of it, the Iranian people, the ones who had been criticizing Iran for not trying to be more conciliatory and to, for example, the US government and try to prevent any war. They were backing the regime instead. This has united the Iranian people to a large extent behind the regime. So it's hard to imagine that Iran has been seriously weakened. And in the attacks, when Iran responded to Israel, let's see, the amount of damage which they did to Israel is estimated, let's see, I think it was $12 billion. Let me see, let me just verify that, but I think that's, let's see. Yes, here it is. Yes, Israel incurred an estimated $12 billion in direct losses. This is military expenditures, damage, reconstruction, compensation during the 12 days. And that comes from L'Orient Le Jour in the newspaper in France. In the US, it's called L'Orient Today. The property damage, one tally showed 18,766 damage claims submitted, including 15,861 for buildings, 1,272 for vehicles, 1,633 for contents and other property. Specific high value damage was that the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot was heavily damaged. And there was a hit on the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, a ward evacuated following a direct hit. Okay. And there was a strike on the Bazan oil refinery in Haifa Bay. It's do I have it here? Yeah, I mean, this is compiled here. It says 12 billion in direct losses, but if I'm not mistaken, in the defense, the missiles and so forth, and the surface-to-air missiles, the cost of those missiles was enormous. And I think it amounted to a total of at least $2 billion. Whereas all of the missiles used by Iran are estimated to have been somewhere between 200 and 300 million. You know, they used cheap stuff, as Russia does, for example. But they do have they have over the years concentrated their research on unmanned or unpiloted aircraft of various kinds, and they're very advanced actually in the use of drone technology, which sometimes has a swarm that when another aircraft approaches, it can swell to exponential sizes larger than its original formation, so that if they surround the incoming aircraft, there's no place for the incoming aircraft to go. It's going to crash into one or more of those drones, and it's going to fall. So, but the drones are governed by a common technology that allows them to respond to incoming. So, and of course, as I mentioned, that they got a lot of help with electronic defense from Russia, actually. And several Iranians have trained in Russia for that. So I have to think that they're actually pretty well prepared. Also, the attack on the nuclear enrichment sites, the three mountain Natanz and Fordo, and what was the third one? Anyway, they those sites there was a lot of damage, but mostly to the soil. It didn't damage very much inside it because it's right in the middle of a mountain. And there were arguments by some pundits that the huge thermobaric bombs that were dropped by U.S. aircraft, the what is it, the something anyway, that they were dropped down the air shaft. Well, that wouldn't help because the air shaft doesn't go down to the workspace. It's designed so that it goes down and then makes a turn and then makes another turn so that if you drop it down there, it's going to hit the air shaft, the bottom of the air shaft, but not very close to any facilities. So, but it was, let's face it, that was largely for show. The United States wanted to say, look what we can do, and they wanted to say it to Netanyahu. They wanted to say, look, we backed you up. We used our state-of-the-art defenses and or offenses, and we you know we we helped you out. But then the fighting stopped after 12 days. Now, why did it stop after 12 days? It's because U.S. intelligence and the U.S. military said to Israel, you know, you've used huge stocks of our surface-to-air missiles and air-to-air missiles. And we only have about 2 days left that we can let you have. So maybe it would be a good time to take a break. That's exactly what happened. Uh, so even a second-tier power like Iran can have a disproportional effect on the military forces of Israel and even the United States. And of course, most of the forces of Iran are arrayed along the western and to some extent the northern borders, because on the other side, which is right next to the Persian Gulf, because on the other side of the Persian Gulf is where the United States has several significant bases in Iraq and in Kuwait, and especially in Qatar. Qatar has the biggest air base in the region, American air base in the region. I think it houses between 4,000 and 5,000 soldiers, and enormous facilities. Well, Iran hit some of those facilities, although it's believed by several people that I know, including Alistair Crook, that this was actually the hit on the uranium enrichment centers in Iran and the hit on the U.S. air base in Al Udeid in Qatar. This was arranged behind closed doors so that they would be able to say that they did this. And it was an understanding between the U.S. and Iran. So I mean, stranger things have happened. So so anyway, where it stands right now. And um, maybe I can tell you a little story if you don't mind. There's a dear friend of mine, Marwa Osman. I just communicated with her a moment ago. She and she's brilliant. She's utterly brilliant. And and she just did a an appearance on um, uh, uh, anyway, it's a taped and broadcast video of them talking, and the two of them, Kevork Almasian is the other one who was talking with her. It was utterly brilliant. And actually, I've been working for a couple of weeks now on something that I want to publish, and it fits in perfectly with what I was saying. But I won't get into that. Anyway, when Hezbollah agreed to the ceasefire in southern Lebanon at the end of November of last year, almost exactly a year ago, I said, no, this you have victory with Israel. Israel is being destroyed, and it was true. It was they had Hezbollah had hit the headquarters of Mossad. They had hit some very secret installations, electronic installations in along the northern border, and they had done severe damage to Israel. Israel was really hurting at that time, but the ceasefire was negotiated with the help of the United States, and because the United States, I guess they could see that Israel was not going to couldn't benefit by keeping it going. But unfortunately, Hezbollah agreed to it, and I think that was a mistake. That was a tactical, strategic mistake by Hezbollah. There's no question they had lost, I think, by that stage, more than 2,000 civilian lives, and the south of Lebanon had been devastated. But to show you the effect that it had by removing that front from confrontation with Israel, Israel and the United States were able to concentrate instead on Syria and to overthrow and destroy Syria. So I didn't want to say I told you so, but I think it was a mistake at that time. And now the ceasefire is in place. But as usual, as I said, with in the case of Gaza, the same thing is true in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese and Hezbollah have ceased, and Israel is firing. They agreed under the auspices of the United States that they would remove all of their troops from Lebanese soil, and Hezbollah agreed not to hit Israeli soil. And what happened was that Israel created 5 what it calls bases in southern Lebanon, and it continues to bomb southern Lebanon on a regular basis. So, that's I don't feel like it. I mean, the sacrifice of the people of South Lebanon cannot be understated, but they're still sacrificing because Israel feels that impunity with respect to anything they do. So that worries me a lot. Anyway, that's getting a bit off the subject of Iran, but Iran is a member of the informal axis of resistance, which initially included Iran, some of the groups in Iraq, important groups, um, Syria, Hezbollah and its allies in southern Lebanon, the Palestinian resistance, uh, Yemen. I think that pretty much covers who is usually considered to be in the axis of resistance. But Iran was important as mainly Iran didn't take actions for the most part. Iran supplied weaponry and strategy and all kinds of things, and of course, but they took hits too, such as the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Um, uh, what's his name, Al-Mahdi, in Iraq that were assassinated. The U.S. intelligence assassinated them. This was a big loss for them. But they didn't hit back. Well, they did hit back. They did hit back, but it was kind of tame compared to the loss of Qasem Soleimani. So maybe I should leave it there and take a lot of questions. But my assessment is that at least until next spring, I don't see, unless something unusual happens, and that's always a possibility. But I don't see any reason to predict a war between Iran and Israel. I think Israel is actually benefiting from not having to do that, and they may use that time to hit. They've actually spoken publicly about preparing the public, Israeli public, for an incursion into South Lebanon, which they have coveted for a long, long time. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for that discussion. And we're going to go to questions now. People should raise their hand uh, with their questions, but I'm going to start off with the first one. and I'm going to ask you about three things that I think are true, but I don't have the expertise. Um, and you could comment on all three, hopefully. One is it seems to me that Israel's primary goal is not to defeat Iran per se itself, but really to get the U.S. to step in and do it. And then this is the strategy that Chiang Kai-shek had, when he was forced onto Formosa. And basically, there was a lot of efforts during that period in the 50s to get the U.S. to go to war and destroy communist China. So, and because I think Israel must know that it can't, defeat Iran. It can just kill lots of people there, but it'll never be able to defeat it. And the second is, um, it seems to me it doesn't matter, whether Israel is in danger. Their attacks on Iran has nothing to do with that. It really has to do with whether Netanyahu is politically in danger, and that's when those choices are made. And then the third is
Okay.
is
Just a
whether
minute,
you
I gotta
want.
write this down.
and
So number one,
number one is get U.S. to fight Iran, not Israel to fight Iran. The second is to get it's not whether Israel's in danger, it's what Netanyahu's in danger politically. And then the third is just the U.S. interest in this seems primarily to destroy the Belt and Road Initiative. So destroy integration between China and Russia, through Iran. That the Belt and Road Initiative is going to go through Iran. So they're kind of my three organizing principles for
okay.
what's going on there.
I'll respond as quickly as I can so in order to leave my time for others. But you're absolutely right. Uh, Israel's only goal in attacking Iran, well, yeah, let's say uh, sending its military into war is a way of preserving Netanyahu in office as well. And war is always a way of unifying the people. And And right now, the Israeli people are pretty divided. So, but you're right. They know that they can't really take Iran on an equal basis, and their entire purpose is to bring the United States into the war and have the United States destroy um, Iran. But there are forces in the United States that are holding the United States back from this, no matter how much Trump, for example, would like to do this. And in the military, among the military strategists and the intelligence community, um, they recognize that Iran can do enormous damage to the world economy and the United States if they are threatened in with the might of the United States military, which is also largely air power. But they can hit a lot of the bases in the Persian Gulf, and they can block the Strait of Hormuz. Once they block the Strait of Hormuz, um, petroleum prices will rise probably to hundreds of dollars per barrel, and the dollar will crash and gold will go through the ceiling. So, I mean, there are terrible consequences if the shipping of oil is shut down for a significant period of time, undoubtedly a period of months at least. So that's just one consequence of this. And so, I think there are very good reasons why the United States would need to say no to Israel. If you want to do this, you do this on your own, and we'll sell you the weapons, but we're not gonna step in for you. We're not gonna commit our own military to this. So, and yes, Netanyahu's survival is a primary um, motivation for almost anything that happens in Israel these days, and and that's why it's part of the reason that I say right now, at this particular moment, his survival is less tenuous than it has been in a long time. So the only thing he's maybe worried about to a degree, and we can discuss this another time, is the idea that the United States will come in and and U.S. troops will be on the ground in and around Gaza. Well, that would be the first time in history that um, that Israel has permitted and accepted foreign troops on its territory. They don't like that. They want to have complete control over all troops that are on its territory. So, uh, and as far as the Belt Road Initiative is concerned, that is a concern. There's no question about it. But I don't think it's the major concern. The major concern is the Wolfowitz doctrine. The Wolfowitz doctrine is that whenever you have a country and a government, a power, whether it's a major power or a minor power, that challenges and refuses to obey the United States and its allies, then it has to be put in its place. And its place is usually barefoot and pregnant, you know? So the I think that's much more of a consideration than the Belt and Road Initiative. But stopping the Belt and Road Initiative is undoubtedly one of the benefits that comes from pursuing this policy of cutting off Iran and trying to gain an advantage and all this sort of thing. So there's no question that that's a factor. but I would say that um, without the idea that they want to overthrow the government of Iran and put in place a a proxy government, a puppet, uh, which is not realistic. It's really not totally unrealistic. Then I don't think the U.S. would pursue that policy. So those are my responses.
Anthony, you want to go ahead and ask your question? Other people, if you want to ask a question or say something about Iran, please raise your hand.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for all the great work you've done over the years. I'd like to go off on a tangent for a couple of questions. One is, what's the state of the population of Syria at the moment? Now with HPS in control, I think there have been at least two huge massacres of Alawites since they took over, which mysteriously got very little reporting in corporate news. So what are conditions in Syria like now overall?
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of friends of mine, including Vanessa Beeley. I don't know if you follow her work. She has taken refuge in Lebanon now. That's where she is now. I saw her there in June. And also um, uh, Abuna Elias Zahlawi, he's in his 90s, and he was the Catholic um, pastor of Our Lady of Damascus Church. And he's now also in Lebanon. A lot of them had to take refuge, but it's not just the Alawis. The Alawis were the first and main target. And actually, the nonprofit of which I'm a part took a big part in this. We sent a total of, believe it or not, $25,000 to Mother Agnes Mariam of the Cross. I don't know if you met her when she came here. It must be 15 years ago or more, and spoke. But she spoke at St. Mary's College and other places. Uh, anyway, she worked miracles. And that's why we provided her with the funds to do that, because there was nobody else taking care of the Alawis on the coast of Syria. And they were having to hide in the woods and in the wilderness there. And what she did actually, but with our help, was to get massive amounts of relief aid to them. She went to the Kurds in northeast Syria and asked them to help, and they were very happy to help, which is amazing. And they wanted to develop ties with their brothers and sisters that were under persecution there. And so they provided the supplies, of which they had a lot. And Mother Agnes, with the funds that we sent her, got a large number of huge semi trucks loaded with all of these supplies, and she delivered them to the coast of Syria. But she was only able to do that once with the first 5,000 that we sent her, and then she said she could do a lot more if she had more money. So I appealed to our board of directors, and they authorized another 20,000, and and we sent that to her, and she went and got the supplies. But that's when Jolani stepped in, al-Shara, and he he obviously had some pressure from some quarters saying, "Who is this woman coming in here and rescuing people that we're trying to annihilate?" So he um, he covered the situation by saying that he'll take control of the supplies and assure that they get delivered. Well, yeah, they got delivered, but not to the people who needed. So that was very, very sad. And Mother Agnes got into a lot of trouble because of that, and there were threats on her life and so forth. So, but then the same thing is happening with the Druze in southern Syria, where there were massive massacres more recently than the Alawites, and so and Israel stepped in because it has a Druze population that actually um, is an ally of the Zionist forces and within Israel. And so they did some defense of that population, but there was a limited amount that they were willing to do in that case. But it's not like they really care about them. They just want to control the area. So they were using Druze there to control the area. But it's a very tense situation there even now.
My other question, do you think Trump would like to be rid of Netanyahu, or does it really matter? Because someone else in that coalition would come to the fore if Netanyahu was out of the picture.
Well, Netanyahu has always helped Trump to get his goals in, for example, the Congress because of the power of the Israel lobby in Congress. And when neither the Republicans or the Democrats really wanted to support him very much in his ambitions, he would rely upon Israel's role in the Congress to get what he wanted. In the current situation, it's still some of the same, but he has some goals, constantly shifting goals, that's the way he is, for how to end the situation in Gaza and other places. And he's concerned about how Netanyahu can be an obstacle to some of these goals. But I and quite a few others, I'm not alone in this, we think that the Epstein files play a major role in this, and that Netanyahu, lays down the law and says, if you go too far in pushing me around, then we have ways of putting you in your place. I really think that's part of what's going on. But they can't push him too far, because if he can't accomplish some of the things that he wants to accomplish, which, as I say, vary over time, then he might be inclined to a certain extent to ignore that threat.
Laura, would you like to ask your question?
I think Bill was first. I'll wait.
Oh, I'm going to alternate because we had two
okay.
men already.
Okay. Hi, Paul. So thanks for all the information. It's incredible, the scope of it. And the question that I have goes back to, well, you mentioned something about some of the soldiers not wanting to re-up. And I'm thinking back to Sir, No Sir, about the Vietnam War. And some people say that really what ended it was the soldiers refusing to fight anymore. And so I have a question about the Israeli military and also the Israeli population, in terms of them leaving and pulling their support away. So whatever you have to say about that.
Okay. There are lots of estimates as to how many to what extent the population in Gaza has been diminished by the genocide. Some of it is Palestinians fleeing, although it's a significant factor, but I would say not a major factor. But there are, the current estimate is 70,000 dead, the official estimate. But the official estimate are 70,000 dead of people who have names and who have been verified, and their bodies have been presented at the hospitals or whatever passes for a hospital in Gaza these days. And this, in other words, it's been documented. But for every one that's been documented, there are probably anywhere between 4 and 8 or 10 that have died under circumstances where they don't get counted, such as under the buildings, the collapsed buildings. But also, for example, stillborn babies, because the mothers don't have the proper nutrition, and so they die in the womb, or the ones who are born, but the mothers have no milk to give them, and you know, children and old people, and on, just the disease that comes from drinking sewage, basically, and because that's the only water that's available. So I and some others, like Ralph Nader, estimate that the number of casualties in Gaza is closer to between 300,000 and 500,000, maybe as many as 500,000. People in Gaza have died as a direct result of the genocide, and and others have left. So the population has diminished by let's see, that would be roughly 20%, I guess. But guess what? The population of Israel has also diminished by 20%, the Jewish population of Israel. Not so much from deaths, although some of them are deaths. The deaths are not being revealed and counted properly. The real estimate of how many have been killed as casualties of war is probably between 5,000 and 7,000, which for Israel is a large number. But there are other casualties which are not deaths, and those are wounded such that they cannot serve any longer in combat, and others that suffer from PTSD and mental disease as a result of what they've seen and done. And but there's an even larger number of soldiers and just the population in general who have said, "Hey, I stayed here for the first couple of months, but I'm not. I didn't come to Israel for this, and I don't want to live in an Israel that's like this." And so they have left, and the government of Israel has shut down the airport to a certain extent. The only carrier that I know of that's going in and out of the of Ben Gurion Airport is El Al, but many of them have gone down to the south and entered Egypt across the border and flown out from El Arish in the Sinai, and some have left by boat going to Cyprus. So both sides are diminishing in size, if you like. So and in the meantime, the ones who remain there are the diehards. I mean, literally diehards, and they a lot of them are fanatics, as we know. They're in the cabinet now, and if they're almost, as it's been reported all over the place, that they're on the brink of a kind of civil war. So things are not well in Israeli society, and so many businesses have closed. They just don't have the goods from Asia, from China and Vietnam and Japan and so forth that they used to receive and that were stocked in the shops. They're not there anymore because the Yemenis have shut down the shipping in the Red Sea, going up to the the port of Eilat, which has closed because there's no business there, and because there are a couple of missiles that have been dropped on the port, and they can't go through the Suez Canal either. There are some ships that are going through the Suez Canal, but these are not ships that are bound for Israel. So in order to get goods from China, there are two ways. One is to go around the Cape of Good Hope and enter through the Mediterranean and go to Israel. That's a long way. It's very expensive and time consuming to do it, but some of it is being done. The other way is overland by sending ships to Oman and the United Arab Emirates and shipping them overland, apparently through Saudi Arabia, to, or maybe I haven't heard that this is the case, that it goes through the Persian Gulf, but I think it's mainly by truck overland through Jordan to Israel. But that also is expensive and time consuming. So things are not well. The Israeli economy is not doing well. It's being shunned by more and more countries, and people who do business with Israel kind of don't want to say that they do business with Israel. So it's going in that direction more and more. And the future doesn't look that bright, in my opinion.
In the military?
The military, yeah, their numbers have, yeah, it's dropped because close to half of the reserves have served maybe 3 times at 3 months each. And they have said, no, that's enough. I served 3 months. That's my obligation. But to serve 3 months and then another 3 months and another 3 months after that, that's enough. And what I'm doing out there, I can't live with myself. So it's they're dropping out.
Thank you.
Bill, you want to unmute?
Okay. Thank you, Paul, for a very enlightening presentation. Just a brief question. How are the struggles of the Kurdish population, either those in Iran or throughout the region, impacting some of these geopolitical issues?
Well, in general, the Kurdish population is a source of allies for Israel, because they, quite honestly, they're treated badly by Iran, and there's a history behind that, and the Kurds are not entirely innocent in this. I don't know. I haven't looked very closely at the dynamics of this enmity and mistrust between the Kurds in and around Iran and the Iranian government. but it's there. And so Iran finds allies among them. The Kurds in Syria, it's a very different situation. I don't know. I could talk for a long time about the Kurds in Syria, but it looks like the U.S. wants to abandon the Kurds in Syria. Trump wants to bring the U.S. troops home, uh, and the Kurds really can't survive uh, without the U.S. troops. Although the number of U.S. troops is small, but if anybody attacks them, it'll suddenly get very big. um, so now, when the Kurds did not have most of them did not have, were not enemies of the Assad regime. They maintained friendly relations with the Assad regime, and the Assad regime actually provided them with arms to defend themselves from the Takfiri, Al Qaeda, and ISIS types that the CIA was arming and training and sending into Syria to try to overthrow a government which was largely popular among the population, but which refused to cooperate with the United States. And so it needed to be overthrown. That was, and so, but that government was helped by Russia and to some extent China and Iran. And so they resisted for a long time, but as we know, last year around this time, they fell. So now the Kurds are in a place where they're looking around for friends, and they're not finding many. They certainly don't have friends in Turkey, which is very anti-Kurd. So, and that's part of the reason that I suppose that Mother Agnes had some success with cooperation from the Kurds in getting supplies and trying to make contacts and alliances with the Alawis in Syria. There was never a problem between the Kurds and the Alawis and some of the other minorities, the Christians, for example, in Syria. So this was it was thought by many, myself included, that when the war ended, and I'll call them terrorists. I hate the word, but when the terrorists are defeated or expelled, then the Kurds would come in and say, let's get back together. And they had already negotiated kind of arrangements for being able to live together and to use their language in schools and so forth. So I think a good relationship would have held if they had been reincorporated into the government of Syria, which incorporated many minorities.
Janet, you want to ask your question?
Yes. Hi, Paul. Um, so I'm interested in your take on Russia's relationship with Iran. We have the mutual BRICS relationship, the economic relationship. There's a Zionist influence in Russia. There are Russians in Israel. Russia has a constitutional obligation to protect its ethnic Russians. And Russia has interests in Syria, and Putin recently met with Al-Jolani, Al-Shara, whatever his name is. So anyway, and there are other factors, but interested in your take on it.
Well, you've actually covered a lot of the, excuse me, a lot of the dynamics of the relationship. And Russia is trying to balance all of these interests, the Zionist interests inside Russia, the the relationship with Israel. But at the same time, it recognizes that as part of the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, um, Iran is an important partner in that, and they have provided weaponry and they have trained Iranian technicians and pilots, and there's a strong strategic relationship with Iran. But of course, Russia is not in a position to provide an enormous amount of help to Iran, just as they were not in a position to help rescue Syria, because they're fighting their own war in the Ukraine. That's the center of their strategic concerns. So I don't see that changing very much. Russia is not going to abandon Iran, and it will cooperate as much as it can. And it um, Iranian drones, for example, are used extensively by Russia. So they're getting something in return for that. They don't really need Iranian petroleum products. They're floating on a sea of petroleum products in Russia. But there is, they try to maintain a significant contact and a friendly relationship, and they recognize that strategically Iran could be important to them.
I don't see a hand up right now, so Paul, I'm going to slip in another question. Uh, Shir Heber has done a number of talks on the Israeli economy, calling it a zombie economy. There's capital flight. There's investment has stopped. People are highly technical people are leaving to go because they want to live in a safe place, like you had mentioned. But I haven't heard a lot about the Iranian economy. Could you say a few words about the Iranian economy and how it's suffering now under sanctions and how it's suffering under being on a war footing?
Yes. The sanctions have had kind of the same effect on Iran as they've had on Russia. On the one hand, it makes it difficult, more difficult to find markets for Iranian exports, especially petroleum exports. But it also has motivated the Iranian economy to become more self-reliant and more diverse. And that has had a significant impact on the on Iranian society, and they're very proud of the ability of the Iranian economy to bounce back. The difficulty is that their currency is not pegged to hard currency, like the dollar or the euro or the pound sterling or anything like that. So, so more and more, of course, they're looking for markets in the BRICS countries, and but Iran's a big country. They have their own markets, and they're actually producing a lot of things. When I was last there a couple of years ago, it was very clear that there wasn't much you couldn't find on the market that you wanted. It may not be exactly the kind of thing that you wanted. It couldn't be maybe the style or the variety might not be there, but the local economy is now uh, slowly, let's say, industrializing, if you want to call it that. They're producing more of their own resources now. So it's not all bad. It's helped to create a more diverse economy in Iran. I would say that it's tough for a lot of Iranians, but most of them seem to be understanding, and they're ready um, to do the best they can. And the Iranian government really does, it seems to be sincere in trying to help those who have the biggest problems. I mean, they have free education, they have free medical care, all of this sort of thing. And they don't have some of the um, advanced instruments, machinery, and um, tools of medicine because of the sanctions, which, of course, the sanctions supposedly, wasn't meant to block those things. But it nevertheless has that effect. And a friend of mine, Tom Nelson, is suing the US government for blocking these things that are not supposed to be blocked by the sanctions. So, but they're surviving.
I had a friend who was that I worked with at the laboratory I work at, and he asked him how his family was doing, and his all family's in Iran, and he said they're okay. He said he was really surprised because they had been on vacation when that war started, when Israel started bombing, and they immediately ended their vacation and went back to Tehran. And he was a little, which concerned him, but I guess, and it was scary, he said, for their family. But that's, people, I think, were not so concerned that they were, there was a lot of talk that people were fleeing Tehran, and he said, yeah, my family was going, headed back there and then stayed there throughout, through the 12 days. So I thought that was an
Did I
interesting contrast.
did I mention that? Well, I said in April that the Iranian aircraft all turned back when they got within 50 or 60 kilometers of the border with Iran.
Israel aircraft.
Israel, yes, Israeli aircraft turned back when they got to the border with Iran. What's interesting is I could find no evidence of any Israeli piloted aircraft flying over Iran in June. None. Zero. So I don't know. It's uh, a lack, an inability to find the evidence doesn't mean that the evidence is not there. But there's so much that's not being released, and there's so many claims of what Israel did to Iran that are totally unverified. No way to verify the targets and what happened there. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
unlike Beirut, where you have all these people with
yeah,
cell phones filming the planes going over, there's
yeah,
none of those cell phones, and everybody in Iran has a cell phone, films of those kind of things. So I think you're correct. This probably didn't happen.
yeah.
Um, I don't see any other names. We're getting about at the end where we normally stop. I want to thank you again. That was great to hear this discussion about what's going on. I'm glad we didn't have to go through another escalation of the war, which many people thought might be coming on a month ago, and uh, somehow some sanity appeared.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, me too. I'm glad. Anyway, thank you all thank you, Jim, and everyone who helped to organize this. And it's a pleasure to talk to all of you. And some of you I haven't talked to you for a long time, and it was a treat to be able to do that.